In a contested land, with memories of hurt and violence all around, Peter recognizes Jesus for who he really is. In a contested land, Peter sees in Christ the promised land. Caesarea Philippi is north of the Sea of Galilee. Biblical scholars have figured out that the area was known for revelations. For example, the patriarch Enoch, an ancestor of Noah, received revelations there. For Jesus and his disciples, though, now, this sacred place is occupied territory. It has been taken over by the Roman Empire. It is a Roman administrative city run by a puppet governor. It is a sacred place lost to a violent empire. We don't know why they were going there. We don't know what they were feeling. It's really interesting to me that they deliberately went to this contested place with all those memories of hurt. And in light of the ongoing tragedy in Ferguson, Missouri, it made me look at the gospel again. I want to say I am, first of all, deeply saddened that a young man was killed, that he lay in the street for several hours. I never want to see anyone killed. I believe that it is always sad, always worthy of mourning. But I am, and I also suspect that many people are, also saddened simply to watch the hurt and the violence come right to the surface and erupt on the streets. I know that there are many, many perspectives on this event in our country, in our community, and right here in this church. For many people in the African American community, this stirs up long memories of a long legacy of violence and injustice. I also have friends who are police officers, and I know people who worry about their safety. And I believe that we all long for peace in our communities, for peace among each other, and this event makes that peace seem so far out of reach. I don't want to speak for everyone. I can't. And I don't want to assume that I know what you are feeling. And my goal here is actually not to tell you what to think. That wouldn't be very Anglican of me. And I want to say that if any of my words today upset you or confuse you, please let me know. And that way I can learn more about your perspective and understand our community's perspective as well. But I'm willing to hazard a guess. I'm willing to suspect that if all of us and all of our diversity share anything, and I can say this because I know already the compassionate hearts that are out there, I think we share a deep sadness that the issues that we hoped were resolved in the civil rights era do not seem to be fully resolved. A few weeks ago, right after we got here, I went to the Texas History Museum, the Bullock Texas History Museum, and checked out their exhibit on the year 1968. It's the year I was born, so it was kind of handy to learn a thing or two about that year. And it had lots of images of the civil rights struggles, photographs, videos, things like that, that really helped me get a better sense of it since I did not grow up in that time. But now when I open up my iPad and I click on the Huffington Post or the Wall Street Journal and I look at the images from Ferguson, it looks really similar to so many things that had happened. And that alone can fill you with despair. It can make you ask if there's any hope. So, let's take another look at a divine revelation in another contested place. Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do people say is the Son of Man?" And the disciples name the usual suspects: Elijah, Jeremiah, John the Baptist, some other prophet. These are pretty safe answers. They're all universally admired figures. But then Jesus shifts the conversation and he asks directly, "Who do you say that I am?" In the first century, this really should have elicited a fairly standard answer about family and social status. Something like, "You are Yeshua, son of Joseph, and you're from Nazareth." But Peter has a revelation. Peter says, "You are the Messiah, a living Son of a living God engaged here in the world, right here in front of us." The revelation that Peter has is that God's revelation is with us, is part of the world. In a contested land where revelation seemed to be occupied by violence, Peter sees the truth. God is not out there, unaware of our struggles, sitting up in the distance saying, "Would you people please get it together?" God is engaged with us, walking with us, leading us. And when we know this, we can have hope. God doesn't promise us that we're going to wave a magic wand and make lots and lots and years of hurt and violence and challenges just go away. That would be nice, but that is actually not what we are promised. Instead, what we are promised is a living, present God who has walked with us in our struggles and knows our challenges. God does promise us that divine wisdom is right there in front of us, within our grasp, and that's all we need. And even though Jesus rightly tells Peter that the revelation that he has received is from God, like all of our revelations and the wondrous grace that we have in our life, we also know that this revelation that Peter had didn't come flat out of nowhere. He had been listening to Jesus, following him, listening to him, not always getting it, maybe not always understanding it, but willing to keep listening. And finally, through that, and through the presence of God, he really began to understand. His eyes were opened to a new vision and a new path. What God revealed in Caesarea Philippi is that even in a contested land where hope seems lost, God will not give up. God will keep revealing God's love and hope for us. And when we know that, we can take a deep breath and we can roll up our sleeves and we can do the hard work that we need to do. We can face sad facts that we don't want to face. We can try to listen to each other like Peter listened, really listen. So often in these situations, we want to reach some kind of quick judgment. I think it gives us some kind of feeling that we have control over the situation if we've decided that we understand it and we have an opinion on it and that'll make it go away. What we often need to actually do is listen, is take the time to listen to each other carefully, lovingly. Listen to each other here. Listen to each other in the community. Listen to the words that we hear from other people on the media. We need to hear God in the perspectives of each other, particularly perspectives that are different from ours. And we need to do this. We need to really listen, not like I see the talking heads do on the news programs where they watch each other's lips move and they wait for the person to stop and then they launch in with their opinion. That's being conformed to the world, as Paul said. That is not being transformed by the presence of God in each other. But we have to actually seriously consider each other's experiences, even the ones that seem really different and distant from ours, and use that to adjust our understanding. Peter gave a divine answer and not the standard answer because he had listened to Jesus. He was listening to God. We may have work to do. We may again be sad. But we have been given the gifts of God, loving presence, ears that can listen, and hearts, and that I know every one of you has, for compassion. And we know that God is still with us, is leading us to the peace and harmony that is the irresistible reign of God. On April 3rd, 1968, the night before he was assassinated, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered what would become his last sermon. And in it, he talked about all the struggles that his movement had had and all the struggles that his movement was still having, even though the Civil Rights Act had been passed. And he talked about all the work that still needed to be done. And honestly, I think he had many, many reasons to be weary and to really wonder if there was any hope, if his work was bringing forth any fruit. And he closed his sermon with a remarkable passage. He said, and I'm going to quote, but I'm not going to try to preach it like he does, because you should watch the video. You can get it on YouTube. It's quite impressive. He said, "I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." There is still work to do. There is still healing to do. Our history is so painful and so full of injustice that we need to realize that we are going to have to keep listening and keep working. But the Reverend Dr. King was right. We will reach the promised land. We will reach the promised land because we are being led. We are being led by a living God who joined with us and who has walked in our streets and who is walking in our streets now and is teaching us the way. All we need to do as a people is to seek that way. First and foremost, seek it in prayer. Seek it in listening to each other. Seek the love and healing that Jesus is still preaching to us now. Amen.